So if you've been subscribed to this channel for a while, you'll know that I love Pikmin. I'm constantly supporting this series and trying to encourage others to do so because it deserves a lot more attention. Every mainline entry is great. However, there is one cursed game we do not talk about on this channel. It is forbidden, apart from today, where we finally talk about it and why it flopped so miserably. And that is, Hey Pikmin. All jokes aside, I don't actually hate this game. It isn't actually that bad. Also, please subscribe. I'm really close to hitting 2K subscribers. If you love Pikmin and Nintendo in general, you'll love this channel. I promise.
Sunrise.
Hey Pikmin released for the Nintendo 3DS in July of 2017. And of course, this was during the release year of the Nintendo Switch. So nobody really cared about the 3DS anymore. Every time a new game was announced for the handheld, it was met with, man, I really wish they would release this for the Switch instead. Nintendo always do this. Whenever they release a new console, they'll say, don't worry, the Switch won't be replacing the 3DS and the Wii U. It will exist alongside these consoles. When in reality, we know they're just holding on to these past consoles just in case the new one flops. But when a few years has passed and the system is performing well, they'll just focus entirely on the new console. So already, the game was being released on old hardware while everyone's attention was on the new guy in town. So of course, sales wouldn't be as high as if it released back in the early days of the 3DS. But sales aside, it's not that the 3DS didn't have any good games releasing back in 2017. I mean, it had Pokemon Ultra Sun and Moon, and even Samus Returns, a proper Metroid game. Something we hadn't seen in years. And yes, I know it was a remake, but it was a good one. But Pikmin fans back then had a lot in common with Metroid fans back then. This series doesn't get as many releases, and they were desperately waiting for the next big entry. Especially Pikmin fans. Because Miyamoto had said all the way back in 2015 that Pikmin 4 was not only in development, but was nearing the final stages of development. So of course this got people excited, and when Hey Pikmin was announced, panic spread because people thought that this was basically Pikmin 4 until of course it was clarified a little later on. But quickly going back to Metroid, because if you remember back when Metroid Prime Federation Force was announced, it was met with a similar reaction. Fans have been waiting for a new Metroid game for years, and instead of a new mainline game, we get a spin-off that nobody really asked for. So releasing on an old console and not being particularly wanted by the fans, but that doesn't mean the game's bad, right? Right? Well, yeah, here's the thing. It isn't bad, and it isn't great either. It's just okay. Hey Pikmin starts off like you'd expect for a Pikmin game. Olimar crashes his ship for the 7,000th time. He really should get his license taken off of him. The main goal is to collect 30,000 Sparklium to refuel your ship, which is honestly quite a lot. However, the big difference with this entry is that it is a 2D platformer. Now on paper, a Pikmin platformer isn't the worst idea in the world. I think with maybe a bit more time and a different dev team, it could work really well, but just do it after we get Pikmin 4, please. There were parts during my playthrough where I saw a lot of potential. I mean, it has charm, but my main issues were the constant hand-holding. It all felt way too easy, and the slow pace of the levels is another major flaw. It perhaps wouldn't be so bad if it didn't encourage you to replay the levels so much. Remember earlier when I said you need to get 30,000 Sparklium to refuel your ship? Well, yeah, again, that is a lot, and each level doesn't exactly give you that much Sparklium either, so you're gonna have to grind out levels, especially if you want to collect all the treasures and everything. Now you see, I judge platformers a lot on their replayability, with platformers generally being shorter compared to other games. It's pretty important. After I've beat the main objective, I want to go back and get all the collectibles I've missed, and I love 100%ing platformers. Or if it's a Sonic game, for example, I want to go back and replay each level a bunch of times to see if I can, get a new record. But when each level is so slow and feels like a chore, I'm not going to want to go back and replay the levels, which would be fine if the game didn't essentially force you to do so. One feature that I really did like though was the Pikmin park. Whenever you would set off on your journey, the Pikmin you would leave behind would essentially go digging for Sparklium, making the goal of collecting 30,000 of this stuff just a little bit easier. A cool idea and a handy one too. You see, I enjoy stuff like this. It's completely optional, the devs didn't have to add it, but they did. So yeah, good job devs. Here's a pat on the back. The developer behind Hey Pikmin is Arzest. A quick Google search and you'll find their amazing portfolio full of some of the greatest games of all time. I mean, to start off, we have Yoshi's New Island on the 3DS. Up next, we have Mario and Sonic at the Rio 2016 Olympics. We have Boost Beast. And of course, the topic of this video, Hey Pikmin. And most recently, we have one of the greatest games of all time. Critically acclaimed. One of a kind. Balan Wonderworld. Okay, yeah, these guys are awful. Not only do they have what's considered the worst Yoshi game on here, one of the worst Mario and Sonic at the Olympic Games on here. I don't even know what the heck this is, but it has a 48 on Metacritic. Out of the 5 games that they've worked on, honestly, Hey Pikmin is probably the best one. Interestingly as well, Hey Pikmin was a launch title for the new Nintendo 2DS XL. What a game to launch your system with, right? It was met with pretty average reviews and was quickly forgotten about. It went on to sell around 400,000 copies, which is, yeah, not the best. So releasing on the dying 3DS, while everyone's attention is on the brand new Nintendo Switch, and not being particularly wanted by the Pikmin fanbase in general, because they were waiting and still waiting for Pikmin 4. And trust me, when passionate fans are desperately waiting for something and you give them something completely different, it usually doesn't go down so well. I thought you of all people would know this, Nintendo. And lastly, just having a mixed reception in general is unfortunately why Hey Pikmin was always destined to flop. But hey, the amiibo's pretty cool, I guess.
Sunrise.